السلام عليكم. إلى طلبتي الأعزاء، تكملة للمحاضرة الأولى Digital Smile Design, the Proportional Smile Design. It is very important to know how to make the aesthetic smile and the ideal smile for each patient. So in this lecture we will going to discuss the theories for obtaining the width of the 6 anterior teeth.
The golden proportion, as we know, the balance, symmetry and proportion are very essential to create the perception of beauty and harmony in objects viewed as aesthetics. This concept of beauty and correlation to the nature and mathematics was known as golden proportion. At first, the golden proportion for the face suggested that if the length is x, so the width will be 0.62x. Proportions of the aesthetic face. As you see here, the facial rule of 7th divided the face into 7 parts. Also, head to body ratio different between the tall patient, which is 1/8 for the head, and for the normal height, which is 1/7 for the normal height. As you see here in the above, the facial rule of 3rd divided the face into main 3 parts, and also this rule will different in aging person because the upper part will increase while the lower third will be decrease. Also, as we see in the bottom of the slide, the facial rule of 5th divided the width of the face into main 5 parts. Determinants of the incisal edge position. The starting point for smile evaluation is the position of the incisal plane. It should be parallel to the interpupillary line. Also, the midline is very important with the fulcrum of the lip. As you see in the bottom, the incisal edge of the teeth will follow the curvature of the lip. Also, it should follow the curve of SP, as you know, the reverse smile curve, and marginal gingiva will display should be confined to the interdental papillae. Okay, no gummy smile here. Also, the tip of the incisal edge will touch the junction of the upper teeth, will touch the junction of wet and dry zone on the lower lip. For the embrasures, as you know, the incisal embrasures should become larger as we go more distally. Also, the contact area at the between central is more than the contact area between lateral and canine. The size and shape of individual teeth. The shapes of maxillary anterior teeth have been associated with the SPA factor, 6 personality age factor. As you see here, the younger central incisor is longer than the older central. Also, for the 6, as you see, the masculine for the male will be more aggressive, more stronger, more sharp angles than the feminine. Also, the canine for the aggressive personality, more harsh and more tip cusp, while the passive and rounded edges for the passive personality. The central incisor is inverted face form. As you see, the square for the square face and tapered for the tapered face, but inverted. the long axis of the anterior teeth should diverge apically as you move more distally. Also, the zenith angle, very important in aesthetic of the maxillary anterior teeth. Proportion of tooth size to face size. As you see here, the size of the central incisor in relation to the size of the face. It's about the vertical 1/16 rule, still that the central incisor 1/16 from the whole length of the face. Also, the width of the central incisor will be 1/16 of the interzygomatic width. There are several rules and division for the face. For example, the interzygomatic width divided by 3.3 equal to the intercanine width. Also, the intercanine width in golden proportion will intercommissure width. Yani, as you see here, the intercommissure width, if it is x, so the intercanine width will be 0.62 of this multiplied by the intercommissure width. Tooth-to-tooth width proportion theories, as you see here, very important to know. There are two main views when we talk about later. The cast view width, which represents the real width of each of the anterior teeth, while the 5 view width indicate when you take a frontal image for the anterior teeth. For example, you will take only the part that you can see from them, so it is not the real dimension. So if we see in here the intercanine width, okay, in the 5 image, it will represent the distance between the distal end of the canine to the distal end of the other canine, while the real intercanine width and the cast view width will represent the same, plus 5 to 6 millimeter. About the width-length ratio, we see, and the articles showed that the 78% width over length ratio is the most preferable percentage for each tooth. When we start with the first theory, which is the golden proportion theory, as you see in the bottom of the slide, you can see when the intercanine, when the central width is measured by x, so the lateral will be measured 0.62x, and the canine will be 0.62 from the lateral width. This is very important in the golden proportion. As you see, the golden proportion will take only the tooth-to-tooth relation. There is no relation to the length in golden proportion. While the other theory, which is the most preferred theory for dentists, it is the red proportion. The red proportion take the mesial tooth width over the distal, the distal tooth width, which is, for example, the lateral tooth width, over the central tooth width, will be a constant relation. In another meaning, if we divide the lateral width over the central, it will be equal to the canine width on the lateral. So the radial proportion is different from other theory, from the golden proportion theory. It will be related to the tooth length and also to the intercanine width. As we see here, if the central incisor is x, so the lateral will be 0.7x, and the canine will be 0.7 from the lateral. but this only occur if we take the 70% ready proportion. That means the ready proportion will come in different percentage. The normal percentage of the ready proportion is the 70%. We will talk about other percentage. For example, if the teeth were short, for the short teeth, the percentage of the ready proportion will differ because it related to the length, not only to the width of the tooth. So there will be the more the width of the tooth mean the more the percentage of the ready proportion. So we take for the short teeth the 80% ready proportion, while for the normal length, as we said before, we take the 70 ready proportion. And the minimum for the long teeth. For the long teeth, we take the 62% ready proportion. As you see here, the 62% ready proportion, it will be retained to the golden proportion. In the upper picture of this slide, there will be a relation between the canine width and lateral width and central width at different ready proportion percentage. As you see, the maximum width of the central incisor will be in 62%, while the minimum width of the central will be in the 80%. Don't forget to remember that these percentage even is different, but the distance between the distal part of the canine to the mesial part of the central for the same direction is the same. As you see, the distance between these three teeth is the same from 62% ready proportion to the 80% ready proportion. The change will be only in the dimensions and width of the canine lateral and central width. So, the steps for determining the anterior tooth width for the ready proportion theory is very important step. Step 1, we should determine the relative tooth length. How we can determine the relative tooth length? We select the very tall, normal, short or very short relative tooth length. Number 2, determine the conversion factor. The conversion factor, we take the length from the cast divided by the length from the photo. Then we will take a number we'll call the conversion factor. In step 3, we use this factor in order to determine the real intercanine width. The real intercanine width by, in the patient's mouth, by multiplying the intercanine width from photo by the conversion factor. In step 4, we determine the central incisor width by dividing the intercanine width, the real one, divided by the, according to an equation, either from 4 to 4.8, according to what? According to number 1, the tall, very tall, normal, short or very short relative thing, with either divided by 4, 4.2, 4.4, according to the length. After dividing, we can determine the central incisor width. After you take the central incisor width, everything will be easy. We only multiply the width by 0.6 ready proportion for the short, while for the long teeth, while 0.8 for the short teeth. After multiplying, we can obtain the lateral incisor width. Then the lateral incisor width can be obtained for the canine width by the same method. After determining the width, we can determine the central incisor length by using the central incisor width divided by 0.78. Also, there is a very important chart here. Another way to take clinical and fast. You can take this chart for easy calculation of each width of each of the anterior teeth. How can we do that? It's easy by dividing the intercanine width over the central incisal length. Intercanine width from distal of the canine to distal of the canine over the central incisor length. There will be a number. The result will be a number from 3.1 to 3.8. Each number, by using each number, you can take the already mentioned radial proportion and relative tooth length and central incisor width and lateral incisor width and canine width. It is very easy and very important to you to know how to make the good selection of the radial proportion, and finally how to take the dimension, the width of each of the tooth to make the most aesthetic and beautiful smile. Thank you for listening, and hope you consider that this short talk is very important to you to know that the radial proportion is the most important theory for calculating the best width of the anterior teeth. Thank you and goodbye.